right. I think we're good to go. I think we're live. Perfect. All right, Aid, how you feeling today?
Good. It's kind of tired,
Good. Right
but
on. Well, you are a Christian. Today we're debating does God exist or is God real? My name's Jed, by the way, my first name, and you're Aid, right? So if we could start by perhaps you kind of explaining your background, what denomination you are, where you coming from, that kind of thing.
yeah, sure. I'm Aid. I'm non-denominant. Technically I go to the evangelical church, but like, non-dominant denominate. Sorry, didn't say it right. My background is just that when I was younger, like 2 years old, I went to church, and then my parents just got busy. I didn't go to church for a long time. I kept on saying I was like Christian, but I didn't really practice anything until I got into high school, and my friends invited me to the high school church program that in the church is called North Point, and North Point had a high school program. I went there, and I went through to a few trips and such. Like we went to Alabama, Florida for a few trips for church, and that's, I guess, where I grew my faith with my friends. But other from that, that's really it for me.
Okay, right on. So you believe in the Christian God of the Bible, is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Do you believe that the entire Bible is inerrant? Are there any mistakes in the Bible anywhere, or is the Bible, as far as you can tell, mostly accurate?
I, s- I would say the Bible is mostly accurate because I feel the Bible is just multiple books put together, because they say about book of Luke and stuff. It's multiple books put together from different eras and different perspectives. So I say it's like mostly perfect.
Okay, cool. Right on. Well, you believe in a God, and I don't. So why don't you go ahead and provide the reason why you believe?
Yeah, I believe just because in general, there's always there's a force out there that causes everything, and it's was it the force has always like helped with good. The force has given us free will to do anything, and I guess obviously punishes bad people with people saying it's karma sometimes. But I believe God that just generally because I believe I was made for a purpose, and stuff like DNA is too perfect to be written on itself, and that the universe was made for a reason. It can't just be that like a random explosion happened. Like what caused that explosion? And I think of it like that. Like without a start, what do we have? So that's what I'm thinking. That's why I believe in God, really, just that there was a cause and there's a reason.
Okay. So when you say the universe has a cause, and that's your reason for one of the reasons you gave for believing in God, how do you know that the cause was God?
Well, I mean, without any higher powers, there's no reason for, or I can like think of a reason why the universe would happen, because what do you call it, like with the Big Bang, right? it's the fact that it's the fact that sorry, it's the fact that there's literally nothing from the beginning. There's like nothing. It was just, I guess, darkness, you could say, but something caused there to be light and caused a spark that created the rest of what we know with space, humanity, and all this stuff we have.
Well, I don't believe that there was ever nothing. So I don't think that the universe ever didn't exist in the sense that there was no matter or energy at all. So we might be in, well, I don't know if we're in agreement on that, but I don't believe something ever came from nothing because I don't think there was ever a nothing. Now, you mentioned that you don't, or you couldn't think of any other reason besides God for the explanation of the universe. To me, that strikes me as an argument from incredulity fallacy or an argument from ignorance fallacy, which basically just states that it doesn't mean you're ignorant. It just means that the fallacy is essentially, I can't think of any explanation, therefore, this is the explanation. So your lack of an understanding of how the universe came to be is not a good justification for assuming you know what the answer is.
Okay. I see yeah, I understand what you mean by that. But here, how do I put this more in a like, okay. But I would say to that, I guess here, sorry. I would say to that I understand with the fallacy, just that since I can't assume anything that I put in on one thing, but also just feel like feels always emotions, but I just note that through everything, there's always been like, I guess, reasons for stuff going to better. There's been reasons for why the universe was made. There's reasons on how we were able to evolve. There's reasons how our how species became a thing. There's reasons through everything like that. If you understand.
Well, I totally agree. There's definitely reasons for why organisms evolve. We have a pretty robust understanding of evolution. We know that natural selection is one of the driving factors of organisms changing over multiple generations, or inheritable traits changing over generations or becoming more prevalent based on environmental pressures. But what about evolution points to a God?
I feel like with evolution, that points to a God is that.
Oh, I think,
My
can
friends,
you
my friends.
repeat? Oh yeah, you're good. Just repeat what you said just now, if you could.
I say for evolution, that points to there being a God is that through, I don't know, think about it, through DNA and just a I guess adaptation, our DNA, I feel like our DNA strand is too perfect that couldn't have been written by itself to be that perfect, because nothing's that perfect. There's someone who designed the DNA and made it that it will help, I guess, carry us through, depending on obviously the animal stuff, but help carry the creature through its like evolution, but just carry it through its time. So if said creature like humans, let me, it's easier to give me an example with humans, like humans with DNA, they were in Africa, and the ones who stayed, they became darker. That's why I'm black, because our DNA had an adaptation with it. And I feel like if it was right in itself, it wouldn't fully be able to do like get every part of it like perfectly fine. So I believe that due to how our DNA was caused, we have the ability to adapt well, because we were it was just designed that way to adapt.
Well, I would definitely push back on the claim you made that DNA is perfect. So, with humans or any other organisms, we find tons of flaws in their DNA or tons of flaws in their body structure. Like, for example, humans are very prone to choking because we use the same tubes for swallowing as we do for breathing. So, it seems like a really horrible design to even allow for choking. If we had two separate tubes, then we couldn't choke. There's other organisms like the babirusa, which I made a video about. I don't know if you're familiar with babirussas, but it's a pig species that lives in Indonesia with two tusks that come out of its face and loop around backwards. And these tusks can get so long that they penetrate its own forehead, resulting in a self-inflicted unaliving. So this organism, through mere just having bad DNA and having this horrible design, causes its own demise. I mean, where's the intelligence in that?
Mm. Hmm. Never really. That pig one was a great point. I'm not gonna lie.
And you mentioned skin color being an adaptation as well. Um, with regards to skin color, the reason, and you nailed it on the head, that dark skinned people are dark because they live closer to the equator where there's harsher sunlight. And then light skin is an evolutionary advantage if you live closer to either pole, because you tend to get less sunlight. So the lighter skin allows your body to absorb more vitamin D, and then the darker skin protects you from the more harsh sun rays. But if there was a perfect DNA, I mean, I guess what I'm trying to say is there is no perfect DNA because our bodies just adapt to the environments that we're in. So depending on the environment, a different body is going to be better at survival, which is why there's no perfect human, there's no perfect organism. It just depends on whatever environment they find themselves in. But you were speaking specifically that our DNA is perfect because it allows for changes. But the changes or mutations that drive the change that we see in organisms are completely random. So we can have beneficial mutations, deleterious or negative mutations, but most of them are just neutral, where we have mutations that either don't affect any visible change or they have some change that doesn't impact survival at all. So it seems like the system doesn't only allow for improvements to survivability, it also allows for just as many detriments to survivability. But based, from our observation, we have a personal bias because we're looking at organisms which have evolved over billions of years. So we're seeing the results of natural selection and assuming that DNA is the result or the driving force of these positive changes, when in reality, the changes themselves are random and it's just natural selection or the bad mutations dying out, essentially, which causes the beneficial ones to survive and thrive.
Okay. That was a really, I'm not gonna lie, that was a really great point you put.
Great, cool. I appreciate you saying that too. A lot of people in a debate, they refuse to ever acknowledge their opponents making any good points, which so I find that admirable. Another thing you brought up too was that the universe was made for a purpose, or that you were made for a purpose. So, what do you think the purpose of the universe is?
I believe for me personally, I believe the purpose of the universe was to just, how do I put this? I believe that the purpose of the universe was that we have a I guess I could say a place, right? We have a place that we can live in, but like also just the fact that I explain this well. I'm sorry, I'm first time.
No, you're good. It sounds like what you're driving at. We have a place to live, like the universe was made for us. Like the purpose was so that humans could exist. Am I on the right track?
Yes,
Okay.
humans could exist through life. Yes, to live.
Well, one immediate question that pops out to my head is, if the purpose of the universe is so that humans could exist, what is the point of all this wasted space? I mean, as you know, the universe is incomprehensibly big. There's, I think, somewhere in the magnitude of 200 trillion galaxies, each with billions and billions of stars just like ours, with potentially other planets. You got all this space. It seems like what is the point of all this stuff if just the entire point of the universe was this one little speck of dust we call Earth, just so humans could exist?
Mm, well, from my perspective, I don't think we're alone in the universe, but I also believe that there are many other. Well, this is a weird one that sounds weird because other people fight me when I say this, even my friends are Christian. But personally, I believe that there are others out there in the universe who's also encountered, but we wouldn't know, honestly, because we don't go to space. We don't spaceship, fly to them stuff. But I believe that they also encountered, but not encountered. I wouldn't know this at all. But I believe that we're not the only ones in the universe, and that, at least in my knowledge, obviously on Earth, that we had Jesus, and there's a God, but God didn't just make us. If we're here on Earth and we're made by God, He would have made other people, and that's why He has a universe full of different species and such, and not just here on Earth. But I believe that all species and living beings in the universe here and also on Earth, like humans and all that, we were all made by God to I guess live our lives, to have a life, to have goals, and to have a chance to experience living and such before we all die and such. But yeah.
Yeah, I think that it's reasonable to believe that there are aliens out there somewhere just based on the statistics alone. I mean, we've already discovered tons and tons of what we call blue planets, or those within the inhabitable zone of other stars. So the Bible says that humans were made in God's image. Does that mean you think that these other aliens probably look a lot like us? Do they look, like apes, like we do?
Um, well, there's a chance I fully don't. I feel like when I've read that verse, when he says God image, I also remembered that the fact that it was not, how do I explain this? Sorry, I want to say that the aliens out there, for a chance, I don't. There's a chance they are human. They look like humans or humanoids, like with apes. But even if it doesn't, with humans being made in God's image, I feel like with that is just general that, sorry, humans were we were all made with a purpose, and in His image, I would say is like more with His dreams and more just like other from dreams, just like, I guess, with, how do I say this without sounding weird about it? We were all made with, because, okay, sorry, let me take a, that verse was written by other humans, but we were, just that verse being written by humans, when it says we were all made in God's image, is more representing just like us as he was talking about more humans, like, because we've only seen humans back then and we didn't think about aliens then. But nowadays I feel like with that it's more just with the possible aliens in space and what we have now, with that verse, when we were all made in God's image, we were all made in, because I don't believe they all look, aliens will look the same as us. Maybe they do, I don't know. But we were all made in the image of God's, like, I guess, hope for us as a species, or just we are made in the image of God's, uh there's this there's a word I'm saying, but I just say hope, like, God's hope, God's thoughts remain in the image of that, in that image of God. But yeah.
Yeah, I think I understand what you're saying. That when it says we're made in the image of God, that doesn't necessarily refer to something physical, but it's more of like on a spiritual or emotional or immaterial kind of way. Our minds are in some way in the image of God. Am I on the right track?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Now, how do you know that God has a purpose or a plan for you?
I feel like I know that He has a purpose and plan for me, because here, let me, there's a specific, don't know where is it, please let me, can't remember where is it. I had a note on that, if it will, if I can, sorry.
No, you're
um
good. Now, is the just to be just out of curiosity, is the note that you're referring to, is this like a Bible passage or Bible verse that you're going to reference?
yeah.
Okay, well, we might be able to bypass that. If you can't find it, that's okay, and move towards, how do you know that the Bible's true? Because if the Bible says God has a plan for you, or God knows what your purpose is, to me that doesn't seem very helpful if what's part of what's under question is the validity of the Bible. How do you know that the Bible is accurate or the Word of God?
I believe the Bible is accurate and the Word of God, due to the fact that just with how it was made, there are multiple books. The Bible is made of multiple books made over thousands of years in, like, three different continents. They have over 40 authors, cross-reference each other, and, like, again, with the languages, they wouldn't be able to speak the same thing. Some speak Hebrew, some Greek, some like Aramaic, and just the content also reference stuff that was, like, yet to happen, and also just talked about prophecies that ended up happening later. But just the fact with how it was made over a period of time, all the authors, there's a cross reference map that just shows, like, um was it just the lines and stuff, but also just again the languages, how many authors just ended up having saying the same like having about the same like message, or having the same like baseline about there being God and such in different parts of the world. Some not even knowing each other, some born before each other, some died before others came. It's just through that.
Okay. And by the way, it looks like your visuals have gone black. I don't know if you. Oh, there we go. Oh, I think that's better.
I was tapped out. Sorry. I
Oh,
tapped the
gotcha.
thing.
Now, when it comes to the Bible, the fact that it consists of multiple books written over thousands of years from three different languages from a variety of different authors, none of that to me seems to suggest that had to be divinely inspired. I mean, we have other books or collections of books that were compiled together by multiple authors, all talking about similar topics. And of course, the books that are within the Bible were all chosen by people during the Middle Ages, during uh, the Council of Trent and some of these other events. There were just people deciding which books to include in the Bible's canon and which ones to reject. So there were a lot of books that got put on the cutting room floor because they either weren't popular enough or the ideas in them contradicted the Bible. So the fact that there's a lot of ideas in the Bible that overlap is merely because these people who chose which books to include and which books to reject were deciding based on the fact that the books did overlap in a lot of these major ways.
Okay.
Which is also not to, I also don't want to brush past the fact that a lot of different ideas and passages in the Bible do contradict with each other. I mean, you mentioned a map that showcases all the cross references in the Bible. There's another map which showcases all the contradictions in the Bible, and there's probably just as many, if not more. I have a running joke on my channel where I call out Bible contradictions, and we're up to billions right now. There's over 1 billion contradictions, and of course that's a little bit of hyperbole, but maybe not at the same time. I'm happy to dive into a specific contradiction if that's something you're interested in too.
I'll hear it. Yeah. What's the contradiction you have?
Sure. So there's a verse in Deuteronomy 28:63 which says, "Just as it pleases the Lord to make you prosper and increase in number, so it will please him to ruin and destroy you." And in other translations, it says, "God delights in killing." So God is getting pleasure from destroying people's lives and causing havoc. But then in another verse, which is 1 Corinthians 13 or 14. It's in First Corinthians somewhere. I might have to look up the exact passage, but it basically just says God takes no pleasure in the death of anyone.
Can you see that last part? Sorry, my thing cut for a second.
Sure. The passage I'm referencing is that God takes no pleasure in the death of anyone, and that is in First Corinthians. Oh, I'm sorry. It's Ezekiel 18:32.
Okay. With that, I say that is I remember hearing that contradiction before, but I explained and thought of it like this. When he says just like destroy yourself, right? At least for me, I believed it was him saying, because there's your soul and there's your flesh, and he's saying like destroy your flesh, and it's how do I say it? Like temptations, it's needs, because the flesh isn't always with what you want, and he wants you to prosper, as you said with Ezekiel. Is he wants you to prosper, he wants you to have eternal life, he wants you to be happy and such, but he wants you to destroy yourself, destroy your flesh and its bearing with its temptation stuff, so you can end up prospering within.
So you're saying when Deuteronomy 28:63 says God takes pleasure in ruining and destroying you, he's referring specifically to physically ruining and destroying you so that you can prosper spiritually. Am I on the
Not
right track with that?
Well, I didn't mean that like physically, like destroying yourself. I meant, when I say like the flesh, I meant like destroying your destroying your sorry destroying your, like, how do I say this, destroying your, I guess, like, connection. Like when it says destroy, you're like happiness, destroy yourself. There's like, it's more with spiritual too. You're obviously you're connected to your body. He doesn't want you to actually cut off your limbs or destroy yourself. He wants you to destroy your like connections to temptations, to always needing worldly desires and like going all that stuff. He wants to destroy that part of you, which is what we call flesh. Because like, oh, I always get partying, like always partying, always drinking. He wants to destroy you. He wants you to destroy that part, which is what the flesh likes. He wants to destroy the stuff your flesh likes. And what was it with Ezekiel? Have peace with him. But just like, I guess you could say destroy temptations is with the flesh, like temptation, sin. He wants you to destroy all of that, the connection with sin to you, and through that have peace with him, but not actually like physically destroy your arm, burn yourself, or anything like that.
Well, that does seem to contradict some of the stuff we hear earlier on in the passage in Deuteronomy 28. Before God says he takes pleasure in ruining and destroying you, he goes into a lot of detail about the specific ways he plans on ruining and destroying you if you break any of his rules. For example, he's going to cause disease, fever, inflammation. He's going to give you cancer on purpose, dementia. He uses SA as a punishment for innocent women. He's going to make your corpse food for birds, which can only happen if you die. So all the things within Deuteronomy 28 seem to suggest that God is planning on just absolutely destroying your life and leaving you as a corpse food for birds. He also says that you're going to be ruined and destroyed and conquered by your enemies, courtesy of him. So he's going to start rigging wars in the favor of your opponents.
Okay. That is a good point. Give me 1 second. I think my camera went black because I'm tapped out of my phone. Here, let me just pull up.
Good. Thankfully, I can still hear you when that happens.
Okay, that's good.
Now, another avenue we could go down when it comes to the validity and accuracy of the Bible is some of the problems it has with history. So I'm sure you're well aware of the Noah's Ark story, which is in complete contradiction to everything we understand about the physical world. We can know with about as much certainty about anything in the past that there was never a global flood 5,000 years ago.
I feel like, I mean, with that, the thing about that is, with Noah's Ark, the thing is that there's so much evil that God wanted to cleanse everything, and the only good left was with Noah in his ark. So he told Noah to get the animals on board and build an ark and stuff, and everyone laughed at him. But the world was so evil, like, just let's say, like, there was a lot of just all the like bad stuff you can think of now. The world's just evil, pure evil. People, greed, all of that was like a lot. And this was early in the Bible, I think Exodus or so. Don't fully remember, but
yeah, Noah's Ark takes place in Genesis 6 and 7. So you're right; it is very early on in the Bible. Now, I wasn't necessarily pointing to the moral or theological issues with Noah's flood, but I'm happy to talk about those. I was mainly referencing how the Bible describes the Noah's Ark, the Noah's flood narrative, but that does not match the evidence that we see in the natural world. There's no evidence that there was ever a global flood. If there was a global flood, it would have created a huge bottleneck event. There's some cracking going on. I don't know if you have anything weird going on your side, but maybe it was me. But yeah, the bottleneck event that the Noah's Ark would have caused with every organism on the planet would have basically reduced, when you reduce every organism down to a population of 2 or 14, you're going to have basically populations that are inbred. So there's going to be such a little amount of genetic diversity, it's going to be nearly impossible for any of those animal populations to survive. You also have saltwater and freshwater fish living in the same body of water. somehow they all survived. And then there's every tree and every plant underwater for a full year, and somehow they all survived. And that the organisms, the herbivores that got off the ark, managed to survive eating something, even though all the plants were dead. And then the carnivores also, they had plenty of food, plenty of prey animals. Oh no, it looks like I lost Aid. Hopefully he requests to rejoin. But yeah, while he's gone, I'll just kind of finish my thought. The prey animals had plenty of animals to eat, but if they ate any of them, they would cause an entire extinction of a whole species. Maybe that's the reason why we don't have dinosaurs. Who knows? But let me see if I can get Aid back in here. He might have been having some connectivity issues. I'll see if I can get Mr. Aid back in here. Let's see, same link. Bear with me, friends. We'll see if we can get Aid back on. I just messaged Aid. Yeah, another issue with Noah's flood, of course, is the whole topic of pandas. Panda bears are native to China. Somehow they were able to make the 3,000-mile hike to the Middle East to get on Noah's Ark. And then somehow Noah was able to find 20,000 tons of bamboo to take with him on the boat, which multiplied the amount of food that he would have needed, not just for pandas, but all the other animals that have really specialized diets, like anteaters who need, I don't know how many millions of pounds of ants per day, or at least for a year, they need tons and tons of ants. So the ark does not have anywhere near enough space to accommodate all these different animals. Then after the flood, the pandas have to travel from Turkey back to China in less than 1,300 years, because that's how early on in the historical record we have evidence of pandas popping up in China, and somehow they were able to survive without any bamboo on the hike back. Yeah, I'm not sure what happened to Aid. I messaged him. Let's see if he can hop back on. Very strange. Yeah, it looks like we're hearing back from Aid. He should be rejoining here anytime soon. Yeah, Noah's Ark also falls victim to the heat problem, which is that when you take copious amounts of water. I just heard back from Aid. He said his phone died. So looks like it's plugged in now, and he should be hopping back on the stream any second. So we'll look forward to him. While he's gone, we'll go ahead and talk about the heat problem with regards to Noah's flood. When you increase the amount of water on the earth by that much, you're going to have an incredible amount of heat production. The amount of heat produced by engulfing the whole world with water would be enough to destroy the entire planet more than once. This is an issue that's been brought up to Answers in Genesis, one of the leading proponents of the Noah's Ark fairy tale, and they admit they have no solution to this problem. They have no idea how to get past the heat problem. So, I mean, it's a huge snafu in this story. Looks like we got Aid back.
Hello? Can you hear me?
Aid. Yes, we can.
Yeah,
Welcome back, my friend.
I wasn't tracking my phone's percentage, so it kind of died. That's my fault.
No, you're good. The same thing happens to me all the time. I'll be when I'm editing a video, and I edit videos on my phone, and it blocks off the percentage left on my battery while I'm editing, so I have no idea how much is left. And then sometimes it randomly dies, and I'm like, no, I lost all my progress. But it usually auto saves, but sometimes it goes awry. But before you left, we were talking about Noah's Ark and how the evidence we see and some of the logistical issues indicate that the story never happened the way the Bible described. Just one quick thing that you could address is how some of the animals managed to get from Turkey, which is where Noah's Ark landed, to other continents. So looks like your screen has a little dial-up symbol. I don't know if you can still hear me, but some animals which are indigenous to, say, South America, like jaguars, sloths, llamas, these are organisms that only exist in the New World, the West, and the Americas. How did these animals manage to get from Turkey across the ocean over to this other continent? Looks like you're muted, Aid. I don't know if I think you've muted yourself. You may have to tap the mute button. Okay, I think we're good now.
All right, my friends are talking. The one thing I will, if I'm cut out. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there was a little bit of cutting in and out. It looks like it's okay now. Go ahead.
Hello.
Hey, yeah, I can hear you. Yeah, the video is a little choppy, but I think we're getting your audio. So
I was saying, back then we didn't write about the Americas because we haven't. Okay. Here. Yeah, I think it's StreamYard in general with choppy videos with two people.
yeah, it is cutting in and out just a little bit. I don't know if you can get
Sometimes.
closer to your
We
Wi-Fi
then
source.
the
Getting into
Americas because we never.
yeah, Ada. I don't know if you can hear me, but it's a little choppy on my end. It's kind of hard to hear what you're saying. I don't know if you can get to the room in your house with your internet router, but that might help.
Europe, Asia.
Ada, it's I can't hear what you're saying. It's a little choppy. It's cutting in and out. Is there a way you can get closer to your internet source? That might help. Looks like Aid is in slow motion mode. He's in PowerPoint mode. He's doing a PowerPoint presentation. Of course, by that I just mean the frame rate is really low, and I can't hear anything Aid is saying. Aid, I'm so sorry, I can't hear you.
Rick, I'm about to get connection up. Sorry, I don't know why it started.
Yeah, it looks like might be having some small connectivity issues on Aid's part, but
Can you hear me?
I can hear you. It's a little choppy, but we can try and see if it works.
I'm gonna try this.
No, not every door, not every door, please. Your friends talk about that door. There's 20 gallons of detergent in there. You can tell.
Yeah. So here's how he was holding the piece.
Yeah.
And here's how I was going.
Yeah, Noah's Ark is just one example of things in the Bible that don't make any sense. And I definitely want to hear your response.
I'm back now. Can you hear
Oh,
me?
it looks like we got.
I made a clone. Okay, can you hear me?
Oh, there we go. Yeah, we got you here.
Yeah, the link for some reason opened through Instagram the second time, so I decided to go back through the browser.
Oh yeah, it's looking way better now.
Okay, yeah, thank you. What was the last point we were talking about?
Oh, we were talking about how some of the animals after Noah's flood, like llamas, sloths, and jaguars, managed to get from Turkey to South America across the ocean.
Back when it was written, we hadn't really discovered the Americas. Americas weren't discovered. North America wasn't known. With what I will say is that when it was written, Noah's Ark and the whole flood, we had the animals around that time, during that time, that went on the ark, and then after the whole flood, after the 40 days and nights when everything returned to normal, the animals went out through the land and such, and through that, some animals, I will say there's a chance animals could have made it to different countries, but continents by themselves, but also the fact that animals could have just grown and evolved from there, because there's natives from the Americas, the Aztec and stuff, but they weren't. They came afterhand. So I would say,
Well, one thing to keep in mind with Noah's Ark is that the flood didn't last just 40 days and 40 nights. That was only the length of the time that it rained. So they were on the ark for over a year. It was about 370 days. But surely you would acknowledge that the fact that the authors of the Bible didn't know about the Americas made no impact on the fact of reality that the Americas do exist and did exist at the time, and that these animals needed a way to get to the Americas. Now, it seemed like you were suggesting that sloths and jaguars you said they could have evolved on these new continents, but what is it they were evolving from? Like microorganisms or fish that were left over? I mean, you would acknowledge that a jaguar shares a common ancestor with some of the other cats. A lot of proponents of Noah's Ark think that there was 2 cat representatives on the ark, which then diversified into the 41 different species of felidae we have today. And jaguars, which are native to the Americas, are included in that. So somehow this cat kind, two of the cat kinds, had to make their way to the Americas in order to evolve into jaguars. But how did they do that if there was an ocean in between?
Get the praise and water.
sorry, people are talking. Here, I'll say. Can you repeat that last part again? Sorry.
Sure. When
it's people, and I'm near a charger right now. Sorry.
Yeah, I got you. So when after Noah's Ark, presumably there were only 2 cat representatives, 2 proto-kitties that were on the ark. Afterwards, the common creationist claim is that these 2 proto-kitties evolved into the 41 recognized species of cat we have today: lions, tigers, jaguars, snow leopards. But how did some of those organisms, like jaguars, which exist exclusively in the Americas or are indigenous to the Americas, how did those cats get here to this continent in order to evolve in the first place?
40, yeah?
And he tells me, right?
I say that
The day that he's supposed to come pick it up.
with with them evolving to different species and them being able to spread out through the land. That is a good point. But with them making it to South America, Americas and stuff after a flood, after the whole year, how do I say this?
Oh, yeah.
Well, here's another.
Yeah.
If I was able to, and it sounds like you're acknowledging a lot of these points, which is great. But if I was able to discredit the Bible in your mind, or indicate to you and convince you that there's things in the Bible which aren't true, like if you could admit that, not that I'm demanding you do, but if you acknowledge that the Noah's Ark story doesn't match an actual historical event, do you think that would discredit the Bible?
I don't think so. I don't think it would. It's just more, how do I say this? I'm missing the words. But I feel it's more that, how do I say this? Sorry, give me a second. I'm trying to find my wording. But I wouldn't say no. There's a reason. I'm personally not on it. Sorry, my friend. But I would say that with Noah's Ark and the flood and such, and how the animals got to America, there are possible. There are possible ways. I'm trying to find what the wording was. I had a thing for it, but I'm trying to. Let me go back to it real quick.
Oh yeah.
It was.
I was looking up this issue on Answers in Genesis, and they didn't have any specific explanation, but one thing that they said was that, back in those days there were a lot of great boat builders, and so people made boats and ships and then just carried animals from one place to another, or animals hitched a ride on a floating log. Now, the idea that an animal like a sloth could grab a hold of a stick or a floating log and go across the entire Pacific Ocean or Atlantic Ocean, either one, because you have to get to either side to get to the Americas, is completely absurd. I mean, these sloths wouldn't have survived that long of a trip. There's no way that all these indigenous species could have gotten from Turkey to all these other continents. There's just no way. And then you also have the issue of Australia, where you have many marsupial animals like kangaroos, wallabies, koalas, thylacine, and none of these animals have fossil remains anywhere in Asia, which means that these organisms that had to have been on the flood in order for there to be, any kangaroos in Australia now, otherwise they would have drowned. They had to get from Turkey to Australia in one generation, because otherwise they would have left behind fossil remains. Now, as I'm sure you know, with animal migration, it's a very slow process. Animals don't, maybe besides birds, they don't typically move with a lot of, they don't cover great distances at a time. So when large populations of animals migrate, it's an incredibly slow process. But the arc narrative forces us to imagine that kangaroos were just on a mission, and that these two kangaroos managed to make it from Turkey all the way to Australia in one generation. That doesn't seem possible.
No, the powdered sugar for like the
I
powdered sugar per every like
I can switch off.
Sorry, my friend said he wants to switch me real quick, but that's fine. But yeah, because he was listening.
Sure, why not?
All right.
Hey, so Marcus is like at a party, right? Can I sit down?
Yeah, sure.
All right. Sorry. So Marcus is at a party right now, and I was listening to a lot of the points that he was sort of trying to make, and I think the biggest problem is that there's just sort of a discrepancy in what he wants to say and what he's actually communicating. So if you could go over some of the points he's made, I feel like I could do a better job, maybe do a bit of a better job articulating them so you could understand them better.
Sure. Well, one of the biggest things that we've talked about is that he was saying we can know the Bible is the Word of God because it's comprised of multiple books over thousands of years by multiple languages. I was pointing out that if we could find some story in the Bible, like Noah's Ark, for example, that doesn't match the evidence we have in reality, it looks like we just lost Aid again. Oh, geez. Maybe his friend exited out of his whatever tab he had open. This is wild. This is a bizarre debate. We got a ton of, we got Aid back.
Sorry
about that.
Oh, no, you're good. Welcome back. By the way, Aid's friend, what's your name? Looks like Aid's friend went black again. Aid, can you hear me? But yeah, kind of a wild debate. We've got Aid at a party debating about theology, and then we got Aid's friend hopping in. Hey, welcome.
My phone's like really weird.
It sounded like you were gearing up to ask me a question. What's up?
Yeah. So if we can find an event described in the Bible, like Noah's Ark, and be confident that that story did not happen in reality the way it's described, does that discredit the validity of the Bible?
I mean, I don't necessarily think so. I mean, from my perspective, I'm a Christian, but I'm not a theological literalist. I don't believe that the universe was literally created over the course of 7 days. I believe that, and I mean, I don't even think that in a lot of cases the translations line up with that interpretation. But what I do believe is I think a lot of the, especially when you're talking about the Old Testament, a lot of the stories that are put forth are highly metaphorical and are less so about the actual calendar of events, and are more so about the emotions and the theological truth behind those things. Do I think there was a flood in the around the Mesopotamian during that time in the Levant during the time in life of Moses? I do believe so. I think there's actually pretty strong archaeological evidence to back that up, but I don't believe that there was an actual worldwide flood and all of the animals gathered. I think it is an interpretation of events, and I don't think that makes it any more the perfect word of God, but I don't think that it's a story.
Yeah, well, and I would certainly agree that the Noah's Ark myth is based on some real events, like a local flood that probably did happen in ancient Mesopotamia, which is the same event that also triggered some of these other flood stories that we hear about, like the Epic of Gilgamesh. But
sure.
the next question that pops into my head is that if you're going to characterize some things in the Bible as actual history and some things as metaphor, how do we determine which is which? How do we know any of the stories in the Bible actually happened?
How do you know what in the Bible actually happened?
Specifically with regards to supernatural events.
In regards to supernatural events, I think that's a really good question, and I think a lot of it comes down to the dating on it, the difference between the New and the Old Testament. I think the Old Testament, in a lot of regards, represents the mythological aspects of the Bible, but I also believe that the New Testament exists to rewrite and redo the old law of the Old Testament. That's why the New Testament exists, because Jesus came down to earth and rewrote the old law. So I believe that the Old Testament exists in sort of like a world of there's a mythology that surrounds it. But I think after the books of the Old Testament, that's when you actually get to historical. What are you guys talking about? When you get to historical accounts that actually begin to line up with the reality of things that have happened.
Sure. And then, I mean, I have a couple of questions that pop in my head. One avenue we could go down is that if presumably you believe God influenced the writing of the Old Testament in some way, and that these stories like Noah's Ark are included in order to present some sort of metaphorical or moral lesson to us, like we have something to learn from some of these stories.
Sure.
So in that case, one avenue we could go down is how do we, or let's look at some problematic story in the Bible and find how there's so many moral issues with it. But with regards to whether God exists, maybe a more interesting route to go down is that when it comes to the New Testament and how you said it's rewriting and correcting some of the stuff from the Old Testament, what evidence do we have to suggest that the stories in the New Testament are actually real?
Because essentially, so I don't know how educated you are on theological history, but the idea of the New Testament is that there were laws and procedures associated with the myths and stories of the Old Testament, and then God sent down Jesus. This is the common theological argument, is that God sent Jesus down to earth to rewrite the old law and make it his law, in the which instead of like you go through like a lot of stuff in like Leviticus about dietary restrictions like that, and he was told to change that into the single law of subscribing to the belief of Jesus Christ.
Well,
Now,
Jesus mentioned more laws than just that one. I mean, even when someone asked him what's the most important law, he mentioned two specifically: love God with all your heart, mind, soul, and spirit, and love your neighbor as yourself. But then Jesus also made reference to the 10 Commandments, and he said you have to think like a child in order to enter heaven, and multiple other instances where he said specific laws.
Live more moral. There's ways to live more morally, but the only barrier from salvation in the Christian perspective is salvation. It's accepting the Lord. But the difference is that before the writing of the New Testament, before Jesus came to earth, there were Jesus said himself, when he broke the law of the Sabbath, he said that I am the law. He was there. He went down to rewrite the old law, which were all, like I said earlier, that are listed in books like Leviticus.
Sure. Yeah. That's just a covenant theology. Sure. Now, how do we know that the things Jesus said about salvation are actually true?
Well, that's why faith exists, right? And I know that's not a good argument, but I'm arguing from, like I said before, a Christian perspective. But I mean, what in your mind is like, because that's a very broad question, because Jesus is probably one of the most documented people in history, and his words are incredibly well documented. What exactly are you struggling to believe is true?
Sure. So I accept that Jesus was probably a real person, or that he was based on a collection of real people, that he was a traveling prophet who spoke a lot of moral lessons, that he was crucified by Pontius Pilate. Now, the things that I can't get behind are where the stories about Jesus, where this character is talking about getting into heaven or entering the kingdom of God. I have no good reason to think that there's an afterlife or anything that follows this life. So Jesus is making all these claims about you need to be saved from hell, which is also introduced in the New Testament. I'm not convinced that heaven or hell are real places, or that this God the Father character is actually up in the sky either.
No, it's like on some land.
Okay, well, we can discuss that later. I think the first thing I'm going to talk about is heaven and hell. Is heaven and hell. Now, there are different ways to read this. There's obviously the traditional Catholic way of these are real realms of existence. One of, connection with the God that exists in the clouds, and one of fire and brimstone. But the way I see them is it's almost sort of like it's a philosophical pondering between, do you allow darkness into your heart? Because the only references theologically to hell are not of a place of fire and brimstone. They're just a separation from God. So it's a rejection of the morality. So to me, at least, hell is a rejection of the law imposed by Jesus, and then the acceptance of that would be exemplified by heaven. So if you are tied to heaven, that means you are tied to the moral law of Christianity. And when people talk about going to hell or being damned to hell, that's just saying that that you've rejected the law and the morality of Christianity, and that's your choice. I mean, that is absolutely 100% up to you. But God's not fair. If you don't want to follow his law, then he doesn't force you to.
I would push back on a concept you mentioned, that the Bible does not describe hell as fire and brimstone. There's a lot of verses like that in Revelation 20:10 and in Matthew, which describes a lake of fire. Now, your interpretation is that that's more metaphorical, and that heaven and hell are basically metaphorical ways to describe our life here on earth. If we follow Jesus's laws, our lives are going to be good, which is heaven. And then if we reject Jesus's laws, then our lives are going to be bad, which is hell. So you're taking it more of a metaphorical sense. Am I on the right track with that?
Well, I mean, yeah, sure. I mean, my perspective is I can't know whatever comes next. That's why I have faith but like, if Jesus were to come down today and tell me this whole heaven thing, you don't like, you just, when you die, it's worm food, right? There's no heaven thing. If Jesus came down and said that, it wouldn't change anything about the way that I live my life, right?
Yeah, that's fair. So would you say you're convinced that heaven exists as its own realm, or that it's just metaphorical for life on earth?
I mean, like I said, I think you're talking about two different things. I think there is the metaphorical living like God, living in heaven. And then there's obviously the argument of heaven actually existing, which is something that you can't really prove empirically, because it's something that has to be believed. And I think that it's much more important to focus on the former rather than the latter in this life. I can talk about about people who I can talk about people who have had experiences like that, whose hearts have gone kaput, and they've experienced things like that, and then we can have a dispute about that and whether or not that's a hallucination or not. But I think that's just going to lead us down a rabbit hole that doesn't need to be led down. And
Sure.
But my interpretation is that I need to live this life before I worry about the next one. And if there is an existence like heaven afterwards, then that's something I'm going to put my faith in. But like I said before, if it doesn't exist, it doesn't change the way I live my life.
Well, I would certainly agree that this life is the more important one, the one that we should be focusing on now, because we have evidence that it actually exists. And I think that one of the main issues I have with religion, specifically Christianity, is that it fabricates this, or I should say, it makes a claim that there's this afterlife that we should pay more attention to. Like the Bible says, this life is like dirty rags. Don't hold treasures for yourself, but worry more about the treasures that await you in heaven. So the Bible describes heaven as a very real place. But I mean, I agree with you that we should focus more on this life now. And I'm also happy to hear you say that even if you found out heaven wasn't real, that you would still prioritize the way that you live this life. But you also mentioned that faith is a justification for believing in heaven. Sorry, what's up?
Sorry. I need to head out really quickly. I would love to continue talking, but I think Marcus wants to switch back right now.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Can you let us know your name, or like your Instagram handle, anything you want to promote about yourself?
I'm Brooks. Nice to meet you.
I can
Brooks.
send you.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
I'll send you his handle after this.
Sure. Brooks, do you want me to include your handle in the video description or anything?
He left. I think I'll send that, but it's probably fine with that. I just want to say about the like how do you know there's hell and heaven part real quick, because that's something I guess I disagree with him on, but it's just the fact that as said in Revelations, because Revelation is how the end time is, about the lake of fire. I believe the lake of fire was the representation, just saying that those who who sin, who do all these bad stuff. Let's just say sin, don't repent, all that, don't have the faith. They go into lake and fire. Talks about how Satan was, or the devil, he was cast out. He was cast down to earth. He's not in the lake and fire. He's in earth now. But he was cast down because he was a sinner. But I believe that for him to be cast down, he would have had to be good, and said he was an angel before, but he let pride take over. But he was in heaven, and he got cast down from heaven for becoming a fallen angel. And
well, and just to be clear, you believe that heaven and hell are real places. These are like locations that await human beings in a real afterlife. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what evidence do we have that there is an afterlife and that heaven and hell are real?
I mean, same with the afterlife, heaven and hell are real. I mean, just the fact that there's always, first of all, well, how do I say this? No. Where are y'all going?
We're going to Harbor Freight. I gotta buy some propane.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Sorry. Anyway,
if you want, I have a microphone.
Shout out Harbor Freight.
Yeah, they're going now. But I want to say that just actually I should probably go with them. I'm going with them. Anyway,
Leave him in the car, but yes, we can.
Who's put this one down?
You sure about that?
I will.
Okay, no,
I'm going with you guys.
All I'm doing is bringing.
Yeah, if you've got to sign off, Abe, that's totally fine. Any last bit of if you've got to sign off, that's all good. Any last bit of evidence that you have that heaven and hell or an afterlife are real?
I would say having hell being in the afterlife and being real, I want to say is based on the fact that are based on the. Oh, can you still hear me?
I can hear you. I just lost video.
Oh, my phone screen's weird. It has ghost touches.
Well, there you go. You're back.
Anyway, I want to say that Sorry. Anyway, I want to say that my final thing about heaven and hell being real is the fact that it talks about the lake of fire, and a place being separated. I say hell is real because heaven's a place that it can be with and dwell in God. There's a reason why we're told to not worry about our worldly belongings, and that will prosper eternally after our death, because time here is temporary. And I believe also the fact that after our time here, if we've done good, put our faith in God, we'll be able to make it to the we'll be able to.
Well, looks like Abe's gone. Yeah, mid-sentence. That was a really weird debate. Yeah, he was like in the middle of a party, and then anyway. But the last thing he was saying was, looks like he's back. Let's add Abe to the stage. He had some final words. Sorry, Abe, it looks like you cut out for a second. You were in the middle of a sentence. What's up?
Yeah, so I just believe generally that with our faith, we're always we're like, as I was saying, we have our faith. We're told to not keep our belongings for a reason. We'll be if we do good, put our faith well, we'll be able to meet God and be in the same place He is. Same place He is. And sorry, and I lost my train of thought. Be in the same place as He is. We have faith. We did good. If we don't put our faith, if we continue our worldly ways and not the ways Jesus approves of, then sure, just give me 1 second. Then we'll be cast down to hell with Satan during his comeback, because Satan was an archangel cast down from heaven to earth. He's on earth right now, But I do believe that through everything towards the end will be, if we have our faith, Jesus came for us the first time, he's going to come again. If we have our faith, we'll be able to be in heaven with God. And then, well, my connection is going to cut off if we leave. Yeah. It was just user. Sorry.
No, you're good. So, yeah, if you have to go, that's fine. But if you, I had another.
I'm gonna give him my hotspot.
Yeah, we can continue for a bit longer.
So, yeah, this issue of faith that you've brought up a couple of times. Now, the way I understand faith is that faith is gullibility. Faith is the excuse people give for believing in a claim when they don't actually have any evidence. Because if you had evidence, then you wouldn't need to appeal to faith. And faith can be used to justify a belief in literally anything. I could believe in a God based on faith. I could believe there's no God based on faith. I could believe that white people are better than black people based on faith, or vice versa. So there's literally any topic. I could believe in lizard people based on faith. There's not a single position that could be that anyone could not believe in based on faith. So if faith can lead to true beliefs and false beliefs, then it's not a good justification for your belief, because that means your beliefs could be true or false. We need something other than faith to validate our beliefs.
My argument to that, sorry, I'm going to take over for half a second, is that I don't really believe there's true empiricism. I don't think that anything can be empirically proven as true, because I think at the root of it, you can question everything. So if you can question everything, then what is true? And then at a certain point, why do you believe that the next time you turn on your car, it'll start? You can argue because of determinism, but there's no reason for you to believe that. There's no reason for you to assume, other than it's happened before, that anything is going to happen again. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, and you're certainly right that we could get into a whole mess of just questioning whether things are true forever, and then we could find ourselves wallowing in hard solipsism where we don't even know if reality is real. But you asked what is true, and I would define truth as that which corresponds to reality, and the reality that I appear to be experiencing right now. So when I say it's true that the wall behind me is pink, that's only true based on the assumption that this reality is actually real. But the confidence level that I have, or that with which I accept claims, is based on evidence and based on observations from the past. So like, this wall was pink yesterday, it was pink the day before that. I have no reason to believe this wall is just magically going to become blue one day, because walls tend not to paint themselves.
But if everything can be questioned, then you have no reason to believe that it will be pink the next day.
Well, just because I can question something doesn't mean I'm not justified in believing a proposition. So the level of trust or level of confidence we have in a given proposition should be dependent on evidence. And it seems like what you're doing is saying, because we can't have absolute certainty in everything because of the problem of hard solipsism, therefore we're justified in accepting any outlandish claim that we could possibly come up with. So you're putting all claims on equal footing.
That's not what I'm saying. I mean, if
okay.
The very notion that hard solipsism can exist causes us to have to be able to question everything. And I just think that at the root of it, there's nothing that cannot be inherently questioned. And I want to talk about what you said earlier about existence being tied to reality. Do you think there are things that exist that cannot that don't have form, like aesthetic things, like love? All right, love. That's a good example. Love doesn't have any material tie to reality, but I think I could hope you agree that is an actual form, in a sense. Like, it's like a platonic form.
No, I don't think I would agree with that. I think love is not a thing which exists. It's a label that we put on a strong connection between two people, or one person and some other thing.
Well, I mean, sure, you could argue that that love is just a connection, is just a label. But then how come there are concepts like like love, or like I said earlier, God, that transcend almost every single language barrier on every single ethnographic map in the world, and individually sporate every single time within every culture in the world.
Sure. Well, that seems pretty straightforward to me. The fact that every culture has this idea of love is just an indication that humans are prone to love. We evolved as a social species. Eventually, at one point, we all shared a common ancestor. We are all related. We're all cousins with each other. So the fact that we all have and share very similar emotions like love and anger and jealousy and lust, all of us share these very strong emotions. And these, you're right, they transcend different cultures because we all are humans. So it's only natural that we all have human emotions.
In the frame of window that we're gonna be.
Okay,
so
sorry,
when we
give
leave,
one
when we get there,
second.
they're gonna be
Sorry.
there at the house. So y'all mind just going there and
Aid and Brooks are on a mission. They're going to Harbor Freight, and we're going to join them. We're all going to Harbor Freight. I actually think I do have a Harbor Freight gift card in my wallet. Maybe I should go get it, and I can hold it up to the screen, and then Aid can type in the number once he gets to Harbor Freight and get access to my gift card.
Sorry, where were we?
We were talking about concepts which transcend culture, like how lots of cultures experience love. And I was arguing how that's just an indication that we're all humans. So it's not surprising that we all share human emotions. But this concept of God that many cultures have similar ideas of God, but of course there's thousands and thousands of different God claims, which are all mutually exclusive. Some people believe that there's a host of gods, the polytheists, the ancient Greeks. Some people believe that there's only one God, but then some people believe that God is Yahweh or Allah. So within the God concept, there's a lot of variety.
To start, let's just cast off the idea of a monotheistic God and just argue the existence of some existential spiritual creator. Okay?
Okay.
For every human desire or for every human feeling, there exists an inverse thing to quench that desire. For lust, there is sex. For hunger, there is food. And it makes sense to me that across every single human culture, there is an innate desire for spirituality that has to manifest into something. And I don't understand evolutionarily why something like spirituality would exist. You can argue it brings people together, but I think hunting brings people together. I think plenty of things can be used to explain those things. I don't know if there is something completely evolutionarily tied to belief, to faith in a higher power, and for that to be a quintessential human desire that sprouts up everywhere at all times. It would appear to me that there would have to be something to quench that desire.
I think I would reject the claim that every human desire has that there's something tied to reality that could quench it, because people desire all sorts of crazy things, and a lot of people's desires can never be fully met. I'm talking
about base desires, like the ones that are like id shit, stuff that exists, that's primal. Like I said, hunger, that across all cultures are primal. Hunger, lust.
Maybe it would help if you defined your working definition of spirituality, because I've heard people use this word in many different ways.
Okay, that's fair. Spirituality is kind of a catch-all. Instead of using spirituality, because I think that's kind of casting a wide net, let's use belief in a higher power.
Okay, so you're saying because people believe in a higher power, therefore a higher power needs to exist.
No, I'm saying that the existence of a higher power is evidenced by people needing there to be a higher power. Okay,
that's exactly what I just said.
Sorry, you're right. No. I mixed words there. That's on me. That is exactly what you said. No, my argument that I'm trying to make is that if there is, if there is a hunger for spirituality that exists base, prime, that exists before, cognitive function or like higher level thinking, then it would make sense that there's a reason why that exists.
Yeah, so I believe that there's a reason why like beliefs exist, but I don't necessarily think that the reason that people believe in a higher power is that there is a higher power. So humans are pattern seekers. So we're constantly looking at the environment and assuming agency where there might not be any. Before people understood how lightning worked, for example, humans just assumed that the gods, Zeus, were chucking lightning bolts down on Earth. But now that we have a better understanding of lightning and electricity, we now know that that's, it's entirely natural. There's no gods involved with lightning. And similarly, when it comes to the creation of the universe, or I should say the beginning of the universe, since people don't understand or know how the universe started or what prompted the Big Bang, people will use the God of the gaps argument to just assume that there had to be some intelligent designer behind it. But to me, that just seems like an argument from ignorance fallacy.
Is an argument from ignorance fallacy something that exists? Sorry, I'm debating semantics here, but I've never heard that term used.
Sure, yeah, no worries. So yeah, well, to start with, as you probably know, a fallacy doesn't mean that what you're arguing for isn't true. It just means that the argument that you're using is insufficient to determine whether it's true or not. Now, the argument from ignorance fallacy, also known as the argument from personal incredulity, is basically, I can't think of a better explanation for X, therefore Y. Or I can't think of a good explanation for the origin of the universe, therefore God. So it's assuming an explanation out of ignorance, where you don't know the explanation, therefore you make one up.
But that's not.
Looks like we lost video there, Brooks.
Argument.
I can hear, but I can't see. Oh, there we go. I can see again. Jesus opened my eyes.
Apologies.
But I mean, that's not the argument I'm making. I'm not making it because it's the only best or only thing that I can think of. Every facet of my belief system is reinforced by the existence of a God or by an intelligent designer.
Can you repeat that again? You're saying every facet of what you believe is influenced by there being a designer? Or can you repeat that?
Yes. Yeah. Sure. I mean, my belief system is my system of belief, from the way I believe the universe works, which I'm assuming is probably has differences from yours, is informed by the existence of there being a God. Like they all feed in causally, they all feed back from there being a God.
Yeah, well, I would agree that your worldview is influenced by your theism. Your belief in God influences your worldview, but surely you would acknowledge that's not an evidence that there is a God, just that belief in God affects the way that you view the world.
No, I mean, I was just arguing from my personal standpoint of it not being this is the best thing that my brain can conjure up. What were we talking about before that tangent specific?
You had made an argument that the belief in God needs a God, or that belief in God demonstrates a God, and we were kind of digging into that. Or that the cause of the belief in God is God.
Yeah, sure.
But people can believe things and be wrong all the time.
Sure. But what I'm saying is that I think that existentially, if you have people asking the same exact questions and coming to the same conclusions again, over and over and over and over again throughout history, or very similar conclusions, that there might be some merit to that conclusion.
So that's called the argument from popularity, where a lot of people believe this, therefore it's true. But a lot of people can believe something and all be wrong. The majority of people used to think that the sun went around the world, but now we know that it's the other way around.
I'm not arguing from the standpoint of popularity. I'm arguing from the standpoint of existential question. It'd be the same thing as me asking, does philosophy exist? And then arguing, and then you saying, well, just because a lot of people have performed that in the past doesn't mean that it is something that exists. Sorry, I'm kind of losing my.
Yeah, well, I would agree with that. Like the fact that people
Kind of
do
losing
philosophy is an indication that philosophy
my train of
exists,
thought.
because philosophy is like
But
the science of thinking. So
the
the
I
fact
think
that people believe in a God, that demonstrates that theism exists. So I'm not disputing that theism is real. The belief in God is absolutely real, and there's millions of people, billions of people who believe in a God. But what I'm wondering is their belief in God tied to anything that actually exists in reality? And you also mentioned that a lot of people across history and across culture all come to very similar conclusions, but I would push back on that. There's been thousands and thousands of different proposed gods, and many of them are mutually exclusive. And a lot of people tend to agree because they've been influenced by a specific religion. So Christianity, Islam, these two most popular religions in the world, the reason so many people have come to the same conclusion is simply because they're reading from the same textbook. They're reading from the same Bible or from the same Quran. So of course they're going to come to the same conclusions.
Well, like I said earlier, we're not talking about right now. I'll come back. I can tie it back later to like a Judeo-Christian Yahweh God. But right now I'm just talking about a creator force, whether that be, whether that be Vishnu or Buddha or whatever. I'm just talking about the existence of a creator, of something that supersedes the plane of reality that we inhabit.
Sure. Well,
So,
and does the fact that people believe in a creator mean that there's a creator?
no, but the only thing I'm pointing out is that is the repeated tendency for people to feel the need for there to be a creator across all human culture would, in some ways, to me at least, indicate that there is a reason why people feel that way.
Well, yeah, certainly I would agree. There's a reason that people feel inclined to believe in a creator. And I will also mention that not every culture does have a creator. There's the Paraha tribe in Brazil, which is a completely atheist indigenous tribe. They have no concept of theism or a god or a creator. They don't believe in any gods. So it's not across every culture, but to be charitable, it is across most cultures do have some sort of concept of a creator god. And there is a reason for that. But what I'm wondering is, how do we demonstrate the reason people believe there's a creator God is that there's actually a creator God? Wouldn't we have to demonstrate that there's a creator God other than simply acknowledging that there's a reason behind people's beliefs?
Can you restate for a second?
Yeah. So I agree that there has to be a cause behind why people believe there's a creator God. But I'm not convinced that cause is that there actually is a creator God. So how do we demonstrate that the reason people believe in a creator God is that a creator God is actually real?
A lot of people can be wrong at the same time.
What are you talking about?
Not
Sorry.
I'm trying to get both perspectives, but like I feel like a lot of people can believe the same thing and still be wrong. No?
Well, that's
Yeah, absolutely.
that's what his argument is. I don't know. It's a good question. I'm just right now. I'm just raising points. I think it's interesting that there is a sort of a universal calling for almost all people across the world for something like this to exist. And I mean, I feel like I feel like I don't see there being any specific evolutionary or environmental reason for that thing to exist. So my next logical assumption is it's something that supersedes evolutionary logic or supersedes environmental logic.
Yeah, my assumption is that the reason people assume agency behind certain concepts is, it does actually provide an evolutionary advantage. Like, for example, back when humans were on the plains in Africa, if we hear a bush rustling in the distance, if humans assume agency, or in other words, assume that there's a lion in the bush that could come attack us, if we run away, we ensure our safety even if there was not a lion there. So if it was merely the wind that was causing the bush to rustle, we're still going to protect ourselves. But if we assume that there's no agency, and then it does turn out that there's a lion behind the bush, then we're going to die. So people that are more prone to assuming agency in nature are those that tended to survive. So this is the kind of bad reasoning that actually did assist in our survival. But now modern humans are applying it to the creation of the universe, even though there's no reason to think agency is required or responsible.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't get that. I think there's a difference between pattern seeking and okay, Marcus wants to switch back. Sorry.
Got here. I do want to say though, with the because I was listening to. Oh, is it still okay? So connected. I do want to say though, talking about Sorry. Let me go step back because I was thought from.
Phone. Me and Tommy will go inside. You can stay.
All right. So I just do want to say that with the talking about there being a God and like even his perspective, just like not only talking about God itself, like Yahweh, it was just like a higher being. I do want to say that we were talking about why there's a higher being. I see it's just like honestly, he wants to make himself known to us, so he puts that just feeling in us, and it's up to us because we have free will to accept that feeling or not. But I say that he's a higher being, and he wants to know us, so he gives us the feeling that we can get to know him. But we ourselves, we could just like deny that feeling. We could be like, I don't do that, or you can accept the feeling that he gives to us. Because again, many people have this feeling, although it's it's displayed differently through different cultures and different ideas and stuff. But everyone has like feeling called that there was a higher being, and they just accepted it. That's why through different cultures, there's like what was it again, like Christianity, we have God. There's like different ones like Buddha, or so just like they're different gods. But I feel like through that calling and through what they've seen, and what their culture is, there's a higher God. It depends on how it's portrayed, and it's portrayed differently than others. But
Sure. Well, I have to push back because I don't have this feeling. I don't have any indication inside me that there is a higher power. There's nothing. I look around at nature and I see nature. I look at the trees and I see trees. I see no reason to believe that there's a God or a higher power responsible for creating anything. And then there's the aforementioned Paraha tribe in Brazil. They see no reason to believe there's a creator behind the universe. So not everyone shares this belief in a creator, or this feeling that there's a creator. And if God truly wanted everyone to know and understand he exists, instead of just giving some people a vague feeling, wouldn't it be better and more beneficial to actually reveal himself? If God could show himself to humanity in a way that we could all come to understand and accept that he's real, wouldn't that be better? Because then he would be bringing so many more people into heaven, into the kingdom of God. But instead, he chooses to hide. He's the hide and seek master of the universe. And he gives some people vague feelings which they can't demonstrate to anyone else that he's real.
I mean, I'll say like I get your point there, but with like not everyone having it, I do agree that not everyone has that calling, but those who had the calling, he wants them to spread it to others. Because how do I say this? With the calling, because this is why we have prophets. This is why we have people preaching it to other missionaries to spread it and stuff. They have a there's a reason they felt the calling. I just want to say that yes, I could have done like he could have given the feeling to everyone, could have done to everyone. But I don't see him as hide and seek. I see him as someone who exists, and while he doesn't have to show or doesn't need approval from this person or that person, doesn't need anything. He wants people to know him, but he wants I think he wants us to also like I guess not like prove, but show that we accepted his calling and we're gonna we'll go through it. That's why I say there's people there's people who go out to preach. They don't have propane.
Sure. I've got a question, if I may. So how do we tell the difference between a God who exists and reveals himself to a few select prophets who then go out into the world and spread his message versus a couple of people making up a god and then going around the world and spreading their own made up message. How do we tell the difference between those two scenarios?
Well, I don't think it's them making up their own message and spreading it. Again, there's been prophets, but
Well, I know you don't think that, but how do we demonstrate that they're actually getting information from God and not making it up?
I'm saying it's just in general that fact that they've been doing this through generations, so they've always been telling the right thing through. We're gonna.
My argument to that would be it wouldn't make sense there would be no reason, especially for the people who exist in the early church, to lie about their testimonies. I mean, all of those people, historically speaking, they were all, except for one, captured and then tortured to death, and not a single.
Looks like we lost Aid again. Yeah, he was starting to talk about the early church. What I was going to mention next, and hopefully I get a chance to ask this question, is that I'm not wondering necessarily about the early church. I'm not saying they're making stuff up. I'm saying the people who initially.
Sorry about that.
Aid's back. I wanted to pause really quick because with regards to the early church, my claim is not that the early church is making stuff up. I think that it's entirely possible they're genuinely convinced that God is real based on claims that were told to them by other people who were convinced, and they were convinced by claims told to them who were convinced. But if you go back far enough, you find people who make stuff up. So I think at the very beginning, the first person who ever said, there's a God in the sky, and then he really likes it when you don't eat shrimp, I think that person was making stuff up, or at least interpreting events in reality and assuming agency when there wasn't any. But how do we tell that the God character that they're talking about is actually real?
Do you want to take that? Well, I mean, I was talking about specifically the existence of Jesus, and what I was talking about in regard to the early church, I was talking about the first generation of the early church, which would have been the 12 disciples, what's up? Which would have been the 12 disciples. And the thing that I said was that it doesn't make any sense to me for all of them to go out into the world, and historically what happened was they all were tortured to death, and not a single one of them changed their claims, and every single time their stories lined up. I just don't think that I think that that's pretty strong evidence for at least if you're not going to say the existence of God, the existence of Jesus, or the divinity of Jesus. I don't know.
How do you know that these apostles were actually tortured to death for their beliefs?
This is common historical knowledge.
They have eyewitness. I say that they're tortured due to just eyewitness testimonies. And okay, you're good.
My understanding is that we have good evidence that maybe 2 of the disciples were tortured and killed for their beliefs, but to claim that all 12 were is not historically accurate. But even amongst the 2, like even if I granted that all 12 disciples were tortured and killed for their beliefs, I mean, so what? People die for things that they are genuinely convinced of, but they're wrong all the time. There's Muslims who fly planes into skyscrapers because they're genuinely convinced that if they do so, they're going to get rewarded in an afterlife with 72 virgins. So people can be convinced of claims and be wrong. So the fact that someone's willing to die for their beliefs is not surprising, and definitely not any indication that there's a God.
I say like this though, back. What?
If 2 apostles and we have good evidence that were tortured to death, would it be that much of a stretch to say that 12 were?
If there's 12 claims and you know that 2 of them are true, you can't just assume that the other 10 are true. You need evidence for each claim. But I mean, I'm happy to grant, just for the sake of argument, that all 12 were tortured. Even if I grant that, I'm saying that even that in itself is still not an indication that their beliefs were actually true, because people can be convinced of fake ideas or false ideas and die for those beliefs. So the passion with which someone's convinced of a claim is not in any indication. It does not determine whether that belief is true or not.
I still the thing is that That's a good point, but I still want to say like this. Back then, this was literally at the turn of it being in the 80s, early 80s. 2,000 years ago. I want to say that just in how to say this. Back then, again, we had eyewitness testimonies. We had the fact that they continued doing what they're doing despite them knowing that they could die from this. They got
okay, Marcus. His point is that doesn't disprove his point, which is that. So I think you need to approach that from a different perspective.
Okay. Let's see. Can you repeat your point again?
His point,
Yeah. Well, basically, the passion with which someone believes in a claim does not determine whether that claim is true or not.
Okay.
The truth is in no way impacted by the number of people who believe something or the strength with which they believe it.
Okay. I do.
That brings us back to the argument, the fallacy from argumentum ad populum. Just because something's a popular belief doesn't it? I said that brings us back to the argumentum ad populum. Just because people believe something doesn't mean that it's true. Plus, we know that eyewitness testimony is incredibly unreliable. It's one of the weakest forms of evidence.
I mean, that's not doing the argument full service, because if you're saying that the argument that he is trying to make, or that I'm trying to make, is just that we believe it because other people believe it, I think that's deceptive. I don't think that's giving it. I don't think that's arguing from good faith.
Well, you were saying you believe it in part because the disciples believed it so hard that they were willing to die for their beliefs, right?
Well, no, I was just using it as evidence that there was historical or at least historical documentation that would bring somebody to that belief, or to bring somebody to that understanding.
Does the fact that someone believes something and is willing to die for their beliefs make their belief true?
I want to.
Not necessarily. Okay, you got that. Sorry, I'll go after you.
I want to. I mean, not necessarily fully. That is true, but I want to say just I guess in general, there has to be a causation. I want to say there has to be a reason.
It's kind of very random to go back to the argument from causation right now. Marcus.
That is, but just it would be random. But I'm just believing that there has to be a reason for them to believe in something for so long that they would die.
Well, I mean, I understand his point. I'm not disputing.
Well, yeah. I mean, of course, you're probably familiar with Jim Jones and Jonestown, where a lot of people really firmly believed that if they drank the Kool-Aid, they would go to heaven. So the fact that people can be convinced of things and can be convinced so strongly that they're willing to die for it has no impact on whether it's true or not. And I think that we agree on that.
Yeah, that is a good point.
So if the apostles' death is not in sufficient evidence to warrant belief in a God, what is?
I mean, even without the apostles' death, I just will say that for the evidence of God, just through the I mean, I could say the fact that it was prophesied about Jesus and stuff, but even if you will be like this in the Bible and that, I do want to say just purely through the fact that we have, I would say, have our, what's the wording for it? I'm trying to find the word. Even with the apostles, even if we don't use the apostles' death for a reason why there's God, we have a reason why throughout all this time, I guess, throughout since the start, like even if you don't come before, during the BCs, 80s, and now we had all these writings about Jesus, and all these writing about there being a God or a higher power through Christianity. Yeah, way outside.
Well, we have plenty of writings about God and about Jesus and about stuff that happened in the New Testament, the Old Testament. We have other holy books, quote unquote, that talk about other gods. But the fact that people write things down in a book has no indication that it's actually true, right?
I mean, yeah, no, no, I agree with that too. Um, bad, man.
Now,
Oh,
you did
sorry.
mention prophecy. I just want to point out that if the Old Testament makes a prophecy about Jesus, which is fulfilled in the New Testament, that's not remarkable in any way. In fact, it's completely unremarkable because the writers of the New Testament had access to the Old Testament. So they had the ability to just make stuff up and say this is in here because it's a fulfilled prophecy. And oftentimes that's exactly what they did, where they say Jesus went to such and such place in order to fulfill X prophecy. And that happened all the time. So the writers of the New Testament had the Old Testament in their hands as they're writing, so that they could just make up events and make up details surrounding Jesus's life in order to fulfill these Old Testament prophecies. So it's unremarkable.
Well, I mean, then again, was it? I still, how do I say this? That's a good point, but I still believe, but I still will say that, with the New Testament, it was more just showing what happened. You could say with the prophecy things, oh, they had the Old Testament with them, and then they didn't. They just wrote it and made stuff up. But I believe that, the Old Testament, even with the prophecies, it was just like a warning. Because again, this was written over like a whole time. People from the Old Testimony who read their stuff, people from the Old Testimony who wrote all of that wouldn't have known, or they knew, but they wouldn't have like seen it because it's a different time. And I still believe that even through all the years, the New Testimony, parts of it was written during the time and also after, because there's accounts with like John during Revelations and what he saw, and then there's accounts of who else? I'm thinking Peter too, I'm pretty sure. But they had two different like counts on the end time, but they're both similar on it. They had
Well, when
sorry.
you say things in the New Testament were written at the time, nothing in the New Testament was written during the life of Jesus. The earliest documents we have from the New Testament, I think, is Mark, which is dated around 40 AD, or no, I'm sorry, 70 or 80 AD, about 30 or 40 years after Jesus's supposed death. So all of these writings we have were made decades after the supposed events took place.
Yeah, no,
And I'm sure you're familiar with the game of telephone, where the more time passes, the harder and harder it is to recall accurate information.
Yeah, no, I misspoke there when I said around time. When I said around time, I didn't mean like exactly when he was alive. I meant to say just like early ADs, like as you said, like 70, 80 ADs. I didn't mean to. That was a misspoke on my part. I will said that.
Okay, that's fine.
What I'm truly am trying to say is just like, here, let me just over there. No. Here, let me just, because with the
Looks like we lost your video, by the way. I don't know if you need to tap your phone to wake it back up.
No, I'm sorry. I'm tapped out right now. Just reading. Okay. Sorry. There it is. With things like the let's say, sorry, I lost my train of thoughts. Here, let me rehash my thing.
Well, we were basically just talking about the New Testament and whether writings in the New Testament can be evidence for a God. And so, I mean, I'll be honest. I'm never going to be convinced that a God exists because of an old book. There's nothing that anyone could have written down 2,000 years ago that would have been so remarkable that I'd be like, oh, wow, now I need to believe that a God exists. I mean, a lot of people can point to prophecies, but there's no prophecies made in the New Testament about the future which are truly remarkable in any way. And there's no, really novel information in the New Testament. There's some moral teachings which are good. There's some moral teachings which are bad. There's a lot of unscientific nonsense, even supposedly from the mouth of Jesus himself. Jesus was a proponent of demon possession. He said that demons are real and that he went around casting out demons. But then the more and more medical science advances, the more we realize that demons aren't real, or there's no evidence to believe that demons are real. And demon possession is not commonly, or no credible doctor is going to diagnose someone with demon possession. We now understand that a lot of these ailments and diseases that we thought were caused by demons are actually either psychological issues like schizophrenia or bipolar or multiple personality disorder. So we actually have a more robust understanding of this medical science. I mean, basically, I bring that up just to point out that the New Testament and the words of Jesus are filled with just misinformation.
I just want to point out, you pointed out that another thing that there's parts that like the New Testament can't tell the future and stuff. I want to point out that things said and prophesied in Revelations has come to pass. They talk about a big war. We had World War II, we had World War I, World War II, big war that nation will be against nation. That has happened. You can maybe talk about the world's
Hang on, before we move on to another prophecy, let's tackle this one really quick. So you're saying the New Testament prophesizes that there will be a big war where a nation is against another nation, and that because World War I and World War II happened, which World War II is the biggest war we've ever had, that's a fulfilled prophecy.
Yes.
But is it really that surprising that someone could say there's going to be a big war? There's always been wars going on. There's never been a time in history where there hasn't been a war. So we can just use a post hoc rationalization to say, look, this was the biggest war that humanity's ever experienced. Therefore, this is what the prophecy was referring to. Maybe someday there'll be a World War III, and then apologists will point to that and say it's a fulfilled prophecy. I guess what I'm trying to say is that a prophecy needs to be specific enough that it can only be interpreted or fulfilled by one event without question.
There is the prophecy about it was a temple in, I think it was Israel. It was a temple in Israel specifically named. I'm not remembering the name right now. It was prophesied that would get destroyed and was destroyed. They're talking about here. Sorry, let me. Okay, that's weird. I'm just saying through prophecies, through revelations, it tells what's happening. I know you mentioned that the World War I and World War II, when it talks about big war, you could argue that prophecy hasn't been made, but I see through it that the fact that we had a big war where nation is against nation, and we had World War II, can also explain that prophecy. I also believe that the fact that
yeah, it looks like we lost your audio, Aid. I was looking up the prophecy that you mentioned where Israel is destroyed. I found one from Amos 9, which talks about Israel being destroyed and no person will be able to escape. But that's never happened. We never had Israel completely destroyed where no one ever escaped. And even now, we have a functioning Israel, or semi-functioning. So there's never been a time where the entire nation was absolutely obliterated where no one escaped. But I don't know if that's the specific prophecy you were mentioning.
Oh, I don't want to end up on the debate.
okay, I won't. So I can say that last part again.
Well, with regards to the prophecy of Israel being destroyed, I was just saying I'm not exactly sure which prophecy you're mentioning, but there's one in Amos 9 which says none of the people will escape. And so Israel's never been so destroyed that all Israelites were completely obliterated. There's Israelites right now. There's people living in Israel. So no matter how much turmoil Israel goes through, people have always survived.
I'm talking about it was in not Revelation. I think it was in Matthew's. It was in Matthew's 24:2, and that was fulfilled around, I think, 80 or so, but it was prophesied about even beforehand a temple being destroyed and then it being destroyed. I forgot the specifics of the thing.
So here's I think in Matthew 24, Jesus is sitting on the Mount of Olives, and the disciples ask, tell us, when will this happen, and what will be the sign of your coming and the end of age? And Jesus answered, watch out that no one deceives you, blah, blah, blah. You will hear wars and rumors of wars, but see to it that you are not alarmed. Such things must happen, but the end is still to come. Nation will rise against nation, the kingdom against kingdom. There will be famines and earthquakes in various places, and these are the beginnings of birth pains. So throughout history, there's always been wars and rumors of wars and famines and earthquakes. This is nothing new. This is nothing remarkable at all. There's never been a time in history where we haven't had earthquakes and rumors of wars.
Okay.
People have been consistently predicting Jesus' second coming for years. If you look up you can look up a list of every time there's been a predicted second coming of Jesus, and it's just an incredibly long list. Oh, it seems like every other week is Jesus' second coming, and every single time people are wrong. But of course, the Bible also says that no one knows the day and the time when he will return. So maybe if we make enough predictions, we can prevent Jesus from ever coming back. Because if we predict every single second of every single day, then Jesus can never return, because then we know when he's coming back. But that's more of a joke on my part.
I mean, with
Can you guys be the phone for half a second?
Yeah.
Hey, sorry, I just have one question.
Yeah, what's up?
What I probably should have asked this. What is this for? Because I don't want
Sure.
on like a YouTube video or anything. I'm pretty.
Yeah, you're live on YouTube right now, as a
Are
matter
you
of fact.
fucking serious?
Oh yeah.
Oh fuck. Marcus,
Yeah, so my channel name is called Flying Spaghetti Auditor. My name's Jed, and I do atheist versus theist debates.
Okay.
But don't worry, I think you've been a good representative of Christianity. I thought you've explained your points pretty well.
Okay, thanks. I'm pretty big on my privacy. I don't want to end up in like a YouTube video. I think live is fine. Recording of a live seems fine. Just like whatever.
Well, the video will be saved afterwards. So if you don't want to be featured in the video, you may want to avoid furthering yourself in the video from now on.
Okay, I didn't know. I was unaware. Yeah, I'm not going to talk anymore. Thank you, though.
Sure. Well, it's been a pleasure speaking with you. And like I said, I thought you were a fine representative of Christianity.
All right, thank you so much. Yeah, I actually would really like to sit down and talk to you at another time. Maybe when I have my points gathered a little bit better. I wasn't very prepared for this debate, which turned out to be a lot more civil and academic than I was expecting it to be. So I would really like to sit down at some other point and actually maybe work through my points a little bit better when I have them collected.
Sure, I'm happy to do that. And yeah, I always try to match the energy of the people I'm talking to, and if anything, prevent it from getting too out of hand. You know, I never want to present myself in the world as some angry atheist. So I want to showcase positive atheism. I want people to see how, you know, atheism doesn't lead to depravity. It doesn't lead to a quote unquote sinful or debauched life. You can live a perfectly great life without the belief in God. And in my opinion, theism, the belief in God, is actually a net negative on society. So I think that societies flourish when there is not a very prolific belief in God. We see that amongst many secular countries right now, or mostly secular countries, especially those in Northern Europe, where the less theistic an area is, the better it tends to achieve in all sorts of different metrics of societal health.
Well, we can talk about that a lot another time because I have some thoughts, but thank you so much.
Sure. Thanks for being here.
Yep.
All right, Aid, did you have any more lines of evidence you want to explore with the existence of God?
As of right now, I'm liking. I would love to do this again though when I'm more, gathered up with my stuff. Because I was like, I'm just gonna go through this, do some research, but I didn't do thorough. So this is really great though. This actually got me thinking, to read more and to, so I really appreciate this.
Sure, absolutely. And one thing, if I could leave you with, there's not very many arguments for atheism because it's the rejection of a claim, and a lot of God hypotheses are unfalsifiable. But One argument that I did want to present to you as maybe a closing bit is the argument from non-resistant non-belief, which basically just illustrates how if there's a God who wants a relationship with all of us, then we would expect him to reach out. And the fact that there's people out there, and maybe some people would deny that I'm included in this category, but nevertheless, there's many people who want to believe in God if he's real and would be happy to worship and adhere to this God's laws. But the fact that God doesn't reveal himself to these people means that either he's unfriendly or incompetent. Either he can't reach out and showcase to his existence to these people, or he doesn't care. He doesn't actually want a relationship with them, which just goes to show that there cannot be a God, logically speaking, who wants a relationship with me and is capable of reaching out, because no gods have ever reached out to me, and I'm open to believing in a God if he would present himself. I probably wouldn't worship this God because I have issues fundamentally with the idea of worship. And depending on this God's laws and rules and the way he wants us to think and behave, I may or may not adhere to his moral standard. If it's anything like the morals we read about in the Bible, I would definitely reject the version of morality that this God bastardizes, because I think that especially the Old Testament is a very gross representation of some very primitive methods of establishing morality, some of our humankind's first attempt at morality. And I think we've graduated far past that. And of course, we've already spoken about covenant theology and how God in the New Testament came and corrected a lot of the laws. Or maybe if I could be more charitable, Jesus in the New Testament corrected a lot of human misunderstandings about the way he wanted us to behave, if I could be more charitable with Brooks's position. But yeah.
I do want to just say, I see your point there. But I do want to say just in general, because you mentioned that, why he doesn't like go out, why he doesn't go out to people and stuff. But I will say there has been multiple accounts, even now and back then, of God
You're breaking up just a little bit, Aid.
touching people, felt his calling.
Aid, you broke up a little bit just now.
Yeah,
can you repeat just the last thing you said? There's been accounts of people who...
That, sorry, give me a second.
Yeah, it looks like you're muted right now. I can't hear what you're saying. I'm curious to hear what these accounts are. There's accounts of people who... I think you were about getting ready to say there's accounts of people who God has revealed himself to.
Yeah, there are accounts of... That's what I was trying to say. Sorry, I pressed the...
Yeah, you're good.
God, like, for me, God has touched my life. I felt his presence several times. Something I've never felt before. There are accounts by there's even I've seen that there are people in your position who I'm an atheist and stuff who felt his presence. But for me personally though, I'm just saying that I felt his. I felt his.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know how this feeling, when you say you felt God's presence, what was the feeling, and how, more importantly, how do you know that it was God that you were feeling? But it looks like we lost video and audio. Aid is still here, but I can't see or hear him. Some connectivity issues here, but if Aid comes back, it looks like Aid's gone. He might hop back on in the stream, but I think we were just about ready to wrap up anyway. So yeah, I'd be curious to know what the feeling is. I mean, I've heard people talk about this feeling of God before, where say you're in church, you get a feeling of euphoria, you get this feeling of great comfort, and looks like Aid's back. Maybe he can shed some light. Hey, welcome back, Aid.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, welcome back. You were about getting ready to say, or actually, sorry, the question I had for you was this: when you say you felt God, could you describe the feeling, and more importantly, how you know it was God?
Well, my personal account was that I was I was alone in my room by myself, and I was going like through a horrible time. And it's just that I don't know why, but I felt like a heaviness in my heart, and it just like I felt a heaviness in my heart, and instead of just nodding it off or something, I just felt the calling. I just felt the need to like go for a Bible, which I at that point I haven't read the Bible in like years. I never like thought about it, but it just called me to read the Bible, and I start reading the Bible. And I forgot what page I opened up to, but it was Psalms.
Probably not Exodus 21. I'm gonna guess.
No, it was Psalms 23 that I opened up to, and which the verse is, "The Lord is my shepherd; I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pasture. He restores my soul." But that's the verse that I opened up to during that moment, and it just like it made me feel like more. It made me feel better because I was going through something horrible, and just like a calling. My chest got heavy. I felt heavy, and the calling out of nowhere just had me go to my Bible, which I haven't used in years, and open up to the page, and that page ended up helping me. So that's my personal account on being reached to through God.
Thanks for sharing that. And I promise I'm not trying to either discredit or make your experience seem trivial in any way by doing this. But I just wanted to try to paint an alternative explanation for your experience, just to hear what your thoughts are it. So you said that you were alone in your room. You felt a really heaviness in your heart. You were going through a really tough time. Now, what if the reason that you felt a calling to reach for a Bible was that you grew up in a culture where people taught you that the Bible and God can serve as consolation during tough times, so that when your life is rough, when things seem down, you can reach out to God. You can turn to religion. You can turn to the Bible for help and guidance. Now, is it possible that because you were taught and influenced to believe this, that could have impacted why you felt the calling to grab the Bible in the first place?
That could be a reason, but I don't think so, because at that point I hadn't. Again, when I went to church when I was younger, that was like before I got into elementary school, and I stopped going to church before elementary school. So it could be, but then again, I don't see it as that, because there's been many times where I could have easily done that over the years, and I did other things. I pursued other things that I thought would help me feel better when I was down and such. So if it was truly that, I would have gone. I would say, if it was due to my background, I would have went for the Bible first instead of all the other things I went to first instead of that.
Can I speak? I know I just said I wasn't going to speak, but I was wondering if I could speak.
Yeah, of course.
So I actually had a very I was raised Christian, and then when about middle school, I discovered YouTube channels a lot like yours, and then that sort of brought me down like a Reddit atheist sort of rabbit hole. And that was my core belief system for a very long time. The inciting event that changed it was I think warming up to the idea for a long time. And I had so one.
Seems like our audio cut out a little bit there, Aid. Picture's frozen, audio's frozen. Yeah, Brooks was just about ready to talk about. Oh, looks like we're back.
Oh, right.
We missed some of the last 30 seconds of what you said.
I guess.
Okay, so I was an atheist for a while. I was raised non-denominational Protestant Christian. And my family they were very accepting of me exploring that part of my faith and not forcing that sort of thing on me, and even though they were Christian. And that helped me develop, I feel like, a better sense of a more analytical mindset when approaching stuff like this. And so in a couple years ago, I'd been warming back up to the idea because I'd just been listening to accounts from my friends who it had really helped. And I was sitting I was trying to go to sleep, and my sister was deathly sick in the other room, coughing up a storm, and that was making it very difficult for me to sleep because, I don't want my sister to be sick. I dropped to my knees, and for the first time in like years and years and years, I genuinely prayed. And about 30 seconds later, it was like actually like it was a feeling that I never felt before, and it was like words that had conjured into my head. The word "stand ready," something like that, like "stand ready" or "be ready," and it was like nothing. It was like words like jolted into my head. It's nothing that I could. It's it's circumstantial evidence, but it's something that I had never felt before. And then the next day, my sister, who had been deathly sick the day before, was completely healed. And I know you can argue from the perspective of me of like me looking for evidence where there is none. But I mean that is a personal story, and while I cannot form a logical belief system based off of that story alone, that has helped me immensely in believing in the faith.
Sure, and thanks for sharing that. And you're right when you say that. If I were to argue against it, I would basically just point out that your testimony is your testimony, and I have no way of verifying what you're saying is true. But genuinely, with testimonies like this, I'm happy to just accept everything that you tell me you genuinely believe, and it seems like you're being totally honest and you have no reason to lie. But when it comes to like these, you pray and you hear these words that are resounding in your head. I've had thoughts and words pop into my head before, but maybe not to the degree that you're saying they did. How do we know that those thoughts that popped into your head were actually from a God? That's the part that I think we would be there may be a failure to demonstrate, and maybe you may be unable to demonstrate that, and that's the nature of personal testimony.
Yeah, that is definitely the nature of personal testimony, and that's why I don't think it is. I don't know if it's necessarily evidence it's not evidence I would use to a non-believer to like talk about personal testimony. I think there is importance in personal testimony, but I can't explain to you the degree with how real that felt to me, because it was genuinely like I've had random thoughts come to my head, words brought into my head, but it was like a different voice was speaking through my head. It was very strange, but that was the initial encounter, and ever since then, I can just say that my life has gotten better and better and better. And while this is not the argument is the existence of God. Another thing that I would posit, and these are just my ending remarks, is that if the existence of a God helps people become better people, then like I said earlier, I don't really think it matters how true it is. I believe it to be true, but I don't know if I see like my family, who are very devout Christians, being good to each other and living as they believe, as the Bible has told them to live, and they're living healthily and happily, then I have no reason to challenge that or question that, because it's helped them immensely and it's helped me immensely.
Yeah, what I would push back on that is that your parents are living by their own interpretation of the Bible. So lots of people can have different interpretations of the Bible, and we have no way of demonstrating which interpretations are actually real. So you mentioned how you disregard most of the laws in the Old Testament, but who's to say these laws aren't actually from a God? And there's Seventh-day Adventists who still adhere to a lot of dietary restrictions. They don't eat shrimp. They can't eat pork. So, when it comes to which laws should we follow, which laws should we reject, I'd be willing to bet there's a lot of laws and moral pronouncements within the New Testament that your parents don't adhere to as well. So, I would argue that if someone actually did follow the Bible to a T, it would make for an incredibly chaotic and horrible society, because we'd have people butchering babies because they have thoughts popping into their head that they should do so. We would have people stoning homosexuals to death because the Bible says they're an abomination. We'd have people burning witches. And all these things have actually happened under the hands of theists, because they use the Bible and their religion to justify horribly atrocious behaviors. And we see that all the time.
Yeah, okay. I would love to push back on that, but I think I'm coming to a natural conclusion because we're pulling back into the party.
Yeah,
So,
we're coming back right now. So
Sure. Party
so-
time.
like, and this would be like another 3 hours of debate. So
yeah,
Yeah, I'll close by saying the utility of belief to me is not a good reason to believe it. So if it were actually the case that belief and adherence to Christianity made people behave better, I would still advocate against it because I care about what's actually true, even if the truth is uncomfortable, even if we don't like the implications of the truth. So I would rather believe in an uncomfortable truth than a comforting lie any day.
that's that's fair. But
Right on. Aid, any
yeah.
closing thoughts before we wrap things up?
I guess my closing thoughts would be is just I guess as I see it, if there's a sorry if there's a what is it? If there's a reason and a cause for people to do good and have a good life and gives them a purpose, then I see it as it being fine as long as it's not something that causes them evil or harm. I guess in a way.
Sure.
Right on.
But yeah, I appreciate this 2 hour 10 minute call. It's such you know I'll look forward to having another one in the future. But yeah, I appreciate this.
Absolutely.
Next time I have my thoughts, gathered, and not just go in being like, oh, I got this, and not stuttering a lot. Apologize for that, and apologize for my phone. I have a my phone randomly ghost taps. The screen's weird. It broke a bit ago, so.
Hey, these things happen. I'm constantly improving my setup as well. When I first started, I was doing all my debates on my phone, and it's the worst. And if you look back at my older debates, the audio quality is a little substandard. But since then, I've been able to update my laptop. I got myself a new microphone. Look at that. It's so fancy. So yeah, now the audio quality is hopefully drastically improved. Yeah, and I'm constantly striving to make the content better and better. So it's always a work in progress. But I
Yeah.
appreciate you being on the stream. I appreciate you presenting yourself, advocating for your beliefs. I always like to say there's no belief that I think I'm justified in holding if I'm not willing to defend it. So if I ever make a claim like that evolution is real or that abortion is healthcare, or anything related to religion or otherwise, I think that I should be obligated to defend that belief to anyone who challenges me. So if there's anyone watching that wants to challenge me to a debate, you're more than welcome to. I have a queue of people, of course, that request debates, and I try to go in order based on who requested first. So, if you request, it might be more than a month before we get a chance to do so, like is the case with Aid. So thanks for your patience. And yeah, it's been a real blast. I love talking about religion, Christianity, atheism. So yeah, until the next time, I hope, Aid, you have an awesome rest of your day. And everyone watching at home, take it easy.
Yep. Yeah.